know what it's all about, but it was quite a thing years ago.
Especially for the kids. I used to follow your truck around and get the little chips.
All of the time.
I mean, you were like the happy ice cream man coming around town.
Yeah. I was on the tailboard of the truck. I always left some pieces there. Carried the ice pick in my pocket, because if you left the ice pick there, one kid would be grabbing the other, going to break a piece of ice and go through their finger or something. And besides, when I went in the house, the little babies in the high chair, they always wanted to see the ice pick. I always wanted to hand it to them. I said to the mother, let them play with that. I'll pick it up tomorrow. Which didn't go over too good, you know.
Glenn Spargo was in the ice business in Danbury, Connecticut from 1931 to 1984. I met him one February day in New Preston, Connecticut, where he was helping demonstrate the old New England art of cutting ice from a lake at the Ice Harvest Festival sponsored by the Inn on Lake Warramug. Few industries have vanished as rapidly as ice cutting did when electric refrigeration replaced the icebox. The speed of the transition was indicated by a famous story, famous in my family at least, of my brother hearing someone mention an ice pick and asking, "What's an ice pick?" I myself remember finding one in the kitchen drawer and having to ask what it was for. The demonstration at Lake Warramug showed a process I had heard about from local farmers in my hometown of West Cornwall, Connecticut. My neighbor Ralph Scoville, like many Connecticut dairy farmers, cut ice on a nearby lake to cool his milk through the following summer.
They'd go out there and they had to clean the snow off first, because you don't want any snow ice, you want all nice clean ice. Then it's laid out like a checkerboard, but they're rectangular checkers. So it had to be done with a square and a line.
After the grid was marked on the surface, the ice was deeply scored with an amazing contrivance called an ice plow, as Jake Holmes, who ran the demonstration at Lake Warramug, explained to me.
The plow would be about 4 feet long. It has very heavy teeth, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blades in it. It has a pair of handles like the old farmer would have for his plow in the summer, or in the spring rather, when he was tilling the field. And then there's a ring in the front. The ring in the front is where they would tie the cable, chain, or rope to the oxen or the horse, whichever they had available to themselves. And the horse would pull it. He would work on chocks, which were basically the same thing as cleats. The front teeth are actually the digging teeth, and they would go down to the depth, usually of about 11 inches as they went along, and would take maybe 4 or 5 passes as they went along during the course of the day, or the morning actually, because as they may have heard me say, they would basically do their field at night if it was a nice clear night so they could work easily, and then the next morning starting at basically at sunup, the men would get out on the ice and start moving it and harvesting it to the shoreline.
Next, the harvesters would cut through the remaining thickness of the ice with a 6-foot-long handsaw.
And of course you'd use it as any other handsaw. You'd work it from the waist and just cut right through the ice. And it really goes very easily. It's amazing. At the end of the day, you are aware of that your back has put a good day's worth of work in, and you really learn to respect what what we call them the old-timers did for a living.
The ice cakes were then floated down a sort of canal cut through the ice.
You came along, you pushed it down quick, and as it popped down, then you grabbed it here and popped it up onto the thing, and along with, then the other pikers took it and pushed it along to how far they were going. You didn't want to go any further than you had to, and then your sleigh or sled was right there to load them on. But some of those cakes were tremendous things, and they, as I said, they had to cut them so that the multiples would be right to go into your ice houses. And then, of course, in those days when they had horses and oxen drawing, they'd get together, say we're going to fill yours today. So Jones and so-and-so and 2 or 3 others would get together, and they'd come there down that day and help draw for you. And then in turn you help draw for someone else. And you only put on a few on a sled. And that's big fun, to take a kid in there, and get the truck going fast, and you lock the brakes and go, and then you'd load up with your ice and go back.
I followed Jake Holmes into the ice house at the Inn on Lake Warramug.
Here we're moving the ice into the ice house. You put the layers in, and between each layer you put about 1 inch of ice. And you pack them as tight as you can. They should be about 1 inch apart. And around the outside edge is about 4 to 6 inches, of which when we're done we'll pack all that with sawdust. And by the time we're done, if the ice house is totally full, it'll last until the end of August, early September, depending on what the usage is.
Eventually, ice harvesting became a big business in Connecticut. Glenn Spargo worked for many years in the ice industry in Danbury.
But when we did it in Danbury, that's where I came from. It was in Danbury in 31. They had a huge ice house and about 8 different rooms under the same roof. And they'd have probably 45, 50 men there. And in the wintertime, they cut.
The commercial ice operations were highly mechanized.
They used to have a saw that sawed the ice down, marked the whole field out, and then you had very little hand sawing to do to gather a large amount of the ice. And it went into a conveyor right out of the pond, and the ice house was below the dam, and it all went on a conveyor into the ice house.
I asked Ralph Scoville what the work was like.
Icing, cutting ice was one of the coldest, worst, wettest jobs there was. You couldn't stay dry in spite of anything because you get all slopped up, and it was terrible. Slippery too, you know.
Every ice harvester I've interviewed had stories of broken legs or people and machines falling through the ice. Sometimes stories with a humorous cast.
He fell in, because he was, just as it went into the conveyor, he fell in. It was about 15 foot deep, the water there. And somebody grabbed a hold of his suspenders and got him out. And the man I was working for, Jack Leisendorf, said, take him home and don't bring him back, because he's drinking. So I took him downtown Hill he lived. He says, hold on, wait just a minute. He come back out, he went and changed his clothes. Did he? So, back he comes. And Jack Leisendorf said, I thought I told you don't bring him back. I said, he wanted to come back. He says, wait 20 minutes, and he was in again. And Jack Leisendorf says, Wendy McFadden, you go to hell home and don't come back. He said, because twice you went down, but the third time you won't be back up, so you're not coming back up here today. I tell you, you had to drink and be half drunk most of the time because you never could stand it. You didn't know whether it was day or night.
The electric refrigerator put an end to the harvesting of natural ice in Connecticut. Glenn Spargo told me that before World War II,
some plants manufactured, but not to a great extent. But right after the war, when the war was over and it was all the refrigeration that you wanted to buy, you could buy it. The Frigidaires, the electric boxes, and these cube machines, they came in about the same time.
the harvesting of natural ice from Connecticut lakes represents an extraordinary example of making creative use of the local environment. Perhaps it has a lesson for us in thinking about our energy problems today. It may seem paradoxical to think of ice as an energy source, but after all, today we produce ice by refrigerators driven by electricity, which in turn is produced by coal, oil, or nuclear generators. Lake ice was a renewable energy source, and one with little adverse impact on the environment. It captured the seasonal variation of the New England climate to provide refrigeration. While no one would want to bring back the brutal and dangerous working conditions of the ice harvest, it should make us ponder what Yankee ingenuity could come up with today to help meet our energy needs through respectful attention to our local environments.